Hey, it's Chris. Which stylus is the best stylus for you? It may not be the Apple Pencil. The best competitor, in my opinion, is the Logitech Crayon, which was just recently updated. Now here's the thing, Apple sells the second gen Apple Pencil here for $130. Definitely not cheap, and it's not included with your iPad. Logitech, on the other hand, sells the freshly updated Crayon here for $70, or about half the price. Of course, you could get the original Apple Pencil Gen 1 for $99, but in my opinion, you should either go all the way and splurge, get the Apple Pencil Gen 2, or if you really do want to save the most, then go with the Crayon. So fully loaded or fully budget, that's kind of what we're talking about. And I just gotta say, picking the right stylus is a big deal. I've tried other styluses. Is it stylus or styli? I never know. Like Lexus, Lexi? Not gonna get into moose and meese. A while back, I checked out an Adonit stylus, which sounded really cool, but actually ended up being a big disappointment. So that's why I'm really stuck on these two as the best options. And just in case you're new around here, you're curious, you haven't seen my take on it, I did check out Samsung's latest, greatest tablet, the S8 Ultra, including its included stylus. And I'll link that video up for you down in the description if you wanna know my thoughts. So what's new with Logitech's Crayon? Well, nothing other than it's got a USB-C port for charging now. You still don't have to pair this. When you turn it on, you get some battery indicator lights that let you know the charge level. And yeah, it's definitely got a different shape to it than the Apple Pencil. It's a little bit flatter and wider. Now the Crayon's made out of aluminum, but it does still have palm rejection technology. It's got the same tilt capabilities as the Apple Pencil. So if you want to make a thin line, you hold it straight up and down and you draw, it's going to be thinner. If you tilt it, you're going to get a thicker line. It's good for highlighting, for instance. And it actually feels really light. I like it, and it also feels weird. I mean, the Apple Pencil is just what you're used to from school, you know. It's very close to just a number 2 pencil. Now, somebody out there is going to be like, well, why wouldn't you buy this Logitech Crayon over the Apple Pencil? It's cheaper, right? One potentially crucial feature that it is missing versus the Apple Pencil is that it doesn't have pressure sensitivity. So with the Apple Pencil, I can push down harder or softer and more or less ink, or in this case, lead, I guess, is gonna show up. With the Crayon, on the other hand, it's all the same. There's absolutely no difference depending on how hard I press on the screen. Now, the reason I want to talk about getting the perfect stylus in the first place is because it really does make the iPad experience a lot richer. I mean, you're going to be able to obviously write and sketch, but there's also the scribble feature where you use the special pen with the A on it, and you can handwrite out stuff that automatically converts into typed text. I just think differently when I'm scribbling. Also, just highlighting and PDF markup. That's a big part of the iPad experience. Doing things like signing a contract with an actual, pen/stylus. That's really nice. And then of course, there's Apple's new Freeform app, which I've made a whole video about, but I feel like that is a custom-made app for a stylus. I would say the Apple Pencil, but for this stylus as well. But that leads me to the other thing that the Crayon doesn't have, and that would be Apple's new hover functionality. Apple recently introduced the ability to use your Apple Pencil. I'm gonna have to repair it here because obviously I can't have these both connected at the same time. But when I use the Apple Pencil, it actually starts to activate things on the screen before my pencil even touches the surface of the display. And a lot of apps are making really creative use of this. So Procreate, for instance, is going to preview your media when you do a hover instead of just tapping on it. I kind of covered some of the cool features in another video, so I'm gonna link that up down below for you if you wanna explore that hover functionality a little bit further. But I guess the Apple Pencil feels more like first class, and the Logitech Crayon feels more like writing in Coach, right? Both can get you to the destination that you want to be at, having a great stylus, but one's just a more upgraded experience. That's the Apple Pencil. So let's start talking a little bit about the actual experience of owning and using these two styluses. Obviously, the Apple Pencil is great because it magnetically attaches to most iPads now, except for the base model. And while it's magnetically attached, it also charges. So you don't have to mess with any cables. You don't have to bring those cables with you. That's always a plus. And for the most part, it's always there with you when you need it. Now, does it sometimes get bumped off in your bag or something if you don't have a case like some of the cases I've featured on the channel here before? Maybe, sometimes, but for the most part, it's very easy to keep with you. right, and convenient. The Crayon, on the other hand, you're just gonna have to remember this thing whenever you go. Throw it in the bag. And when you throw it in the bag, you also want to throw in your USB-C cable. Because the last thing you want is to get where you're going and have a dead battery. Speaking of battery and charging, the other thing to know is that the Apple Pencil does have better battery life. But if you're artistic in any way, shape, or form, you probably want to go ahead and spring for the Apple Pencil and today's sponsor, Paperlike. Before we get into the guts of this comparison, what it's like to use both of these in various ways, shapes, and forms, I gotta tell you, I got a fresh Paperlike installed on this brand new M2 iPad Pro, and wow, is it nice. It makes such a huge difference to have this Paperlike resistance on here than to not. If you use the link in the description, you can actually get the Paperlike Pro bundle for 15% off for Black Friday, which includes not only the Paperlike screen protector, but also the Paperlike pencil grips and Paperlike cleaning kit, which are all highly recommended by me if you take your Apple Pencil experience seriously. So check it out, it's linked up down in the description. Let's talk a little bit about the grip and comfort with these two styluses. Now, I feel like when I first laid eyes on this Crayon here, I thought, I'm not gonna like it. It's too weird. But you get used to it, and after a while, it starts to become very familiar, and it doesn't feel as awkward as it looks like it might be. The shape of this has actually grown on me a lot, but I think it's much better than you would expect. And I do give Logitech some points here for doing something different, for not doing something really obvious, and for having their own personality with this shape. That said, I feel like the Apple Pencil shape is absolutely unbeatable because it feels like a real pencil. It's just more natural, right? If you do a lot of writing, kind of get that callus, this fits that perfectly. And oh, there's that hover functionality kicking in. So I'm getting a preview of the tool that I'm about to use, the color, the placement, before I even hit the paper, so to speak, or the Paperlike. But I actually really like the one flat edge that you get here. That does actually kind of give you a good place to kind of orient your hand and rest your finger. But then the double tap functionality that you get with this virtual button here. The ability right now, I've got it set to just switch to the eraser, but that's really great to just switch between the tools. And that's another thing I should have mentioned earlier that you can't do with the Crayon. So again, luxury versus coach. I mean, you don't need these upgrades to survive, but they are upgrades nonetheless. So in the comfort department, you know what? They're both actually pretty comfortable. If you made me choose, I would pick the Apple Pencil. All right, so the two things you're gonna end up doing the most with your stylus would be writing and then also probably sketching. So let's talk about each of those and which one I like the best. When it comes to writing stuff and marking things up, I definitely prefer the Apple Pencil. A lot of this is just very subjective, so keep that in mind. But my personal opinion is that I think my hand feels less fatigued when I do a big writing session, which, by the way, I like to do writing sometimes instead of typing or just kind of brainstorm and sketch things out. And this is why I like freeform so much, because I can just kind of brainstorm stuff without any structure. And if I need to type, I can do that. Or if I want to use Scribble, I can do that. Or if I just want to do handwriting, I can do that. But if I'm doing a big, long, let's say hour and a half, 2-hour session of just heavy Apple Pencil usage, I do feel like the Apple Pencil is less fatiguing. And that really just mostly comes back to the grip on the Logitech. But I think a lot of it honestly just has to do with I'm not used to it. My whole life I've been using stuff shaped like this pencil, and this just feels like a fat, almost like a highlighter, but it's a flat highlighter, you know? And I don't want to make it sound like this is bad, you know, because it's actually not. And actually, I think a lot of people would just use whatever they have and not really think about it too much. But when you have both sitting side by side and you're actively comparing them, I feel like that's when you actually notice some of the differences. That's when it becomes more pronounced. All right, but what about when it comes to sketching? Do I have any thoughts on, you know, which one I prefer for that? I'm real tempted to say that I like the Crayon better for certain types of sketching. Obviously not for precision stuff, because, you know, the pencil does end up being more precise there. But for certain types of sketches, I do kind of like a looser grip, and this sort of is nice for that because of the wide body of this thing. Again, though, comfort aside, especially when we're talking about art stuff or anything creative, that hover feature on the Apple Pencil ends up being a really big deal. And honestly, so does that pressure sensitivity. It really makes a huge difference when you're working with anything artistic. So what do we got here? We have the Apple Pencil, which is $130. We got the Logitech Crayon, which is about half the price. You get Hover. You get a capacitive touch button on the Apple Pencil that lets you switch between tools. You get the ability to just magnetically charge it and keep it with you all the time without having to plug in, a USB-C. Even though it's nice that this has USB-C now, at the end of the day, it's really hard for me to recommend anything other than the Apple Pencil Gen 2 if you're serious about your iPad. If you're going all in, you're getting the paper-like, you want to get the best out of your experience, you gotta get the Apple Pencil Gen 2. That said, the Crayon is an absolutely solid stylus as long as you're not doing anything art related. And even if you are, you can make some really good creative stuff with the Crayon still. It's just not going to be reaching its full potential, I would say. All right, so thus ends the Stylus Wars video here. I would say stay away from any of the cheap styluses that you find out there because I've tried them. I know they're tempting. Like the stuff you get on Amazon, it's just not as good. They really are pretty junky, and you do get what you pay for. All right, that's it for this video. Hopefully you got something out of it. I know this comparison has been done before, but I was surprised by the lack of information regarding this updated Logitech Crayon here. And it's been a few years since anyone really talked about these. Hovers come out in the meantime, and so I just want to make a video that was a little bit more comprehensive for people. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video. Comment with your questions. Try to get those answered. Check out the Daily Tech wallpaper packs. Also, we have a podcast and a newsletter. Both come out on Fridays. If you're doing anything in the Apple ecosystem, the Apple orchard, so to speak, then make sure you're subscribed or signed up for both of those. It's all linked up in the description. I'll catch you in the next video. Later.